Hey everybody, this is Tanner Invest here, and this is my 7th video on the digital asset treasuries for Ethereum, which are Sharplink Gaming, ticker symbol SBET, and BMNR, which is BitMine Emergent Technologies, ran by Tom Lee, and then also Joseph Lubin on the SBET side. So real quick, before we get started, my cat is hanging out too. He's a real big fan of these ETH treasury plays. But I wanted to just start out the video by saying, hey, thanks so much. I'm at like 45,000 views throughout my series on the previous 6 videos, as well as around 2,000 likes. So I really appreciate the support within the community. Today's video is going to be just a little bit more on the news relating to Sharplink Gaming, a little bit more news on BMNR as well. They've obviously been very active, as we've anticipated, with issuing new shares to buy back more ETH to increase the Ethereum per share. That's the ultimate goal with all the treasuries. And they're doing it at such an accelerated rate because they truly believe that this is a breakthrough for Ethereum and that over time, the value of Ethereum will be going up dramatically of where it is today. And we are kind of seeing that, guys. We have a huge amount of Ethereum increase. This in the last week, we've been up about 19%. Over the past month, we're up 51% on ETH, and these treasury plays are kind of considered to be leveraged plays on the underlying asset, similar to MicroStrategy and MSTR. But other than that, today I am also going to explain kind of what I'm buying into, why I'm doubling down actually on Sharplink Gaming because of how low, incredibly low its MNAV is. But also I'm going to share a couple of other news early on in the video regarding the Wall Street kind of viewpoint of these ETH treasuries, why people like Cathie Wood, Peter Thiel, these people are jumping into a lot of these plays, and why Ethereum is ultimately being already viewed as the winner of the layer 1 chains for stablecoins, for the adoption of blockchain technology. So we're going to hop into that, and then later in the video at the end, I'm going to jump into some new treasuries that have popped up in the market, and they're actually not related at all to Ethereum. So there's some other treasury plays, and I'm going to just highlight those quickly and why personally I'm not going to be touching them at all, at least at this moment. So let's go ahead and hop in. I really first want to start out with something I found pretty interesting is that since the inception of all these cryptocurrency ETFs, Bitcoin, of course, with iShares, IBIT, has kind of dominated. As you see here on the left, we have IBIT, and they're the massive ETF for Bitcoin. But we can notice that over the past 4 days of trading, the volumes of the Ethereum treasury plays have actually surpassed those of the Bitcoin treasuries. So that's a good sign. I mean, obviously the hype surrounding BMNR and SBET had kind of driven this, and the stories, the marketing behind Tom Lee going on CNBC every single day and talking about this stuff. But it's also not only that, guys. It's also that I think the public as well as Wall Street are actually understanding like the bull thesis around the Ethereum and why stablecoins and tokenization of assets are so important, and that's going to be driving global finance for the years to come. So let's go ahead and jump in here as well. We have one more chart here. We can actually look at the fall of Bitcoin compared to Ethereum in a percentage basis of all crypto. So right now, we've seen in the past in 2021, Bitcoin was about 70-ish percentage up here at the top. And we've seen, when the altcoin season in 2021 happened in the bear market, we actually saw that decline pretty sharply. But over the coming last couple of years, Bitcoin has really increased in dominance over all the cryptocurrencies. And Ethereum now, primarily because of Ethereum, we are now seeing a little bit of a dip, going from about 66%, and now we're at about 60% of Bitcoin dominance, which, guys, if you guys remember from my previous videos, I am not a doomer at all on Bitcoin. I'm very bullish on Bitcoin as well. I just do think that right now there's a lot of hype around Ethereum for good reason, and that's what's causing that decrease right there. So I also want to jump into this because it's always great to see when supply is less than demand. And right now, BitMine's Twitter actually posted this, that we are seeing a huge increase in these Ethereum, the volume with Ethereum. So we can see the net buys from ETFs as well as the accumulation from the digital asset treasuries that is just absolutely dwarfing the amount of new issuance out in the market. So that's a great sign. When You know, if you're in economics or if you took any economics courses throughout your life, you know that that's a big thing when it comes into play is demand versus supply. So pretty massive. Now, I talked about Wall Street. Now, Wall Street, you know, has a view of these plays, and you know, as Tom Lee has mentioned, and I've shown in previous videos, Wall Street has chosen Ethereum already, and I agree with that because it's the most trusted blockchain technology out there. We've had 10 years with absolutely zero downtime, and then we have proof where we have, you know, Cathie Wood and other investors out there that are, you know, Peter Thiel, they're jumping on the Ethereum bandwagon. So I think that Wall Street is choosing this, and so does Tom Lee. And I want to just show you this little snip because Cathie Wood has asked, like, why did you get into Tom Lee's BitMine? And this was like part of her response.
Well, first we saw Coinbase for its layer 2 base chose Ethereum. More recently, we saw Robinhood for the layer 2 that it is evolving, also building on top of Ethereum. We had a thesis that Ethereum was going to be the institutional protocol. I know that Solana was doing much better. Solana had a massive run relative to Ether. And so many people were challenging that notion. And yet we're seeing the votes being placed. And it makes sense. Ethereum, while it might be higher cost and a little slower, it's more decentralized and therefore more secure. Solana, we think, is probably going to be the winner in more consumer-facing applications.
All right, guys. Well, there it is. You know, Cathie Wood explaining it perfectly as to why a lot of these Wall Street, you know, people out there, they're thinking that Ethereum has kind of won the battle on the institutional side of things. I mean, the fact that Coinbase built Base on Ethereum, that's a huge sign of confidence. And then Robinhood building Robinhood chain on Ethereum, that's a huge sign of confidence as well, guys. So that's part of why I'm super excited as well. And why I have a lot more invested into Ethereum than I do Solana, you know, personally. And so this video, by the way, if you guys are interested, I'd highly recommend watching. CoinDesk actually is owned by a company you might have heard of recently called Bullish, who just IPO'd this week. So CoinDesk is like their media outlet for Bullish. And so highly recommend checking that out. Bullish is basically a cryptocurrency exchange that is built for institutions. So that is unintended bullish on all cryptocurrencies, because if there's easier ways for institutions to get in to trading, you know, things like there's deep pool liquidity, there's spot trading, like on the spot with low slippage. I mean, things like that is just going to allow for more and more and more institutions to get into cryptocurrencies, because right now they don't like know where to start, like where are they going to go to get in, right? So I really like that IPO. I unfortunately didn't buy, but it's okay. Totally okay with that. Now, I want to jump in here too. There's another video if you're interested in listening to more of kind of that Wall Street sentiment on Ethereum. You can check into Private Money, which is a new series that ARK Invest puts out, talking specifically about Bitcoin. So I would highly recommend watching this video here if you guys have time. What's really cool about this specific video is this economist, Dr. Arthur Laffer, is a really famous economist. He actually was studying under someone who won a Nobel Peace Prize over economic theory in the past. And apparently since the 70s, he's been looking for technology that basically Bitcoin provided. So he was super excited because when Bitcoin came out and Cathie and Arthur originally talked about this, he mentioned that since 1971 during the Nixon administration, he has been looking forward to something this after the gold exit happened. The gold window was closed. So I'd highly recommend checking that out as well. Let's hop over to this. So let's go ahead and get into BMNR news. The biggest piece of news, guys, this might be a little late for a lot of you guys, but we actually upped the common stock issuance from 2.5 billion to 20 billion. 20 billion. $20 billion, guys. That's crazy, because if you do the math, 20 billion more in Ethereum based on today's prices basically gets them to their alchemy of 5%, where they're hoping to have 5% of all of all the ether out there that in existence. So really, it was just an amendment to their previous. As you see here, I actually pulled up Ricky, which I've shown him a few times on this channel, where he actually put in red kind of what they changed, and then in green was what was added. But really, it was just an amendment to their already issued 2.5 million issuance in the past. So obviously, guys, we've already talked about this a ton. Yes, this means dilution, but since they're trading at such a high MNAV, and right now they're quite significantly over the MNAV of SBET, it actually gives them, more options, because if they're trading at a high MNAV, they can do ATM offerings and then get Bitcoin, use arbitrage to get Bitcoin, or sorry, to get Ether, obviously at a lower price. So I'm really excited about this. And then let's go ahead and get into the price action too. Because I want to finish up with the BitMine news here in a second. But we have Ethereum this week, guys. We are still up. We have gone on a bull rush. Today, you probably noticed the price has gone down a bit, about 5%. And that is because there was some PPI inflation numbers that came out that were a little higher than expected. So inflation just being higher, obviously, that's not good for cryptocurrencies. We want inflation to be lower. We want more money to be out there, because liquidity is massive for cryptocurrencies. But guys, I don't think this is a massive deal. I actually bought some more today. I bought some more BMNR, and I bought some more Sharplink today, because this is a little bit of a dip that I think is worth exploring. Not financial advice. I obviously have to put that out there every time I talk about it. But BitMine, we can look at BitMine, because in comparison to ETH, BitMine is actually trading higher, and we've noticed that throughout the month as well. And over the day, it's actually trading lower. So that's a really good sign. The fact that BitMine is still, getting that premium, where if Ethereum goes down 5%, it's not going to go down as far. And if Ethereum is going to go up, it's actually going up further. So that's a really good sign right now for BMNR. It has a ton of not only institutional people that are in this now, but also we have private investors, retail community is eating this up like candy. So you see, Sharplink Gaming isn't looking as hot today. They're actually trading down a little bit further, not only from ETH, but also from BMNR. So that's not the best sign in the world. But I think it's just due to, people are trying to decide, like, are there going to be two winners? Are there going to be one winner? I personally think that there's still going to be two winners, guys. As you see here, a little bit of sneak peek. I actually bought more SBET, just because, just like with equities, what I try to do is use social arbitrage, use social observance to see, do I think the market's wrong? Do I think, do I have some intel here, or do I have an opinion that I think maybe people are wrong and I can actually benefit more off that? So right now, BMNR is trading at a much higher MNAV, but Sharplink, I think that there's a couple reasons why I'm really still heavily invested in that. Is because, well, one, they're trading right above the a 1.0 MNAV. They're like a 1.2. Two, I think they're going to raise capital just as fast or faster in the long run than BMNR. But then also, I think that the fact that they hired on Joe Chalem from BlackRock, which he was the guy, as you guys recall, who came up with IBIT ETF. So he's also helped launch ETH-A ETF. And so he knows how to launch instruments into the market. And I want to show you guys this, because as we're aware, MicroStrategy, this is MicroStrategy's digital credit, is what they're calling this. So this is their fixed income instruments. So the reason why these instruments are a little bit more attractive than just holding MSTR is because there are different type of investors out there, right? There are people who are more focused on growth, and there are also people out there that are focused on income. So that's why, there's a lot of people out there that love dividends. I personally don't trade dividend stocks very much, but there's a ton of people that do. And so if you're an income investor, you might be attracted more to this than you would directly into MicroStrategy. And this gives you that exposure to Bitcoin as well. But as you see here, these have some incredible dividends on these preferred stock here. We have 10%, 9%, 8%, 10% on these different preferred stocks. And so that's kind of the main way MicroStrategy is looking at this. They're trying to raise capital without diluting shareholders excessively. So they actually came out with a strategy called 2121, where they're trying to raise 21 billion via their equity, which is MicroStrategy stock, and then the remaining 21, which is half, of course, of 42, they're trying to get from these different type of instruments. So that's really cool. And now where I'm going with this is I think Joe Chalem is brought to Sharplink to be able to create these instruments just like MicroStrategy did. So we've already heard them say they're copying the playbook. And I think this is part of copying that playbook. If you can double the amount of money you raise in a year by having different instruments, why would you not do that? So my theory is that that's what they're going to do. I think that SBET will actually be the leader in that, or at least the first mover advantage in that realm of instruments. So let's go ahead and hop into some more BitMine news, guys. The chairman's message is now on the homepage. I just wanted to highlight that because as you know, if you've been watching my entire series, the beginning, I was more jumping into SBET than I was BMNR. And that was specifically because of the transparency behind when they were issuing things, what their MNAV was, etc. Now, BitMine actually came out with a video in July called the chairman's message, and they plan to do this every single month. And they have that right on front and center on their website now. Pretty cool. You know, and I've already mentioned this a lot too, but guys, like, they're not trying to fight each other. Sharplink and BMNR are not enemies. They are friends. And so one thing to note is that Fundstrat actually has purchased some SBET. So obviously for purposes, they can't, it's a little bit of a conflict of interest is the word I'm trying to think of. It's a little bit of a conflict of interest if Tom Lee were to go out and buy BMNR and put it into Fundstrat, obviously. So he is buying SBET. That's the one digital asset treasury he's holding with a 2.5% weight for their crypto portfolio. Pretty cool there. And as you see here as well, they actually had a summit where Tom Lee and Joseph Chalem, this was just yesterday, it was a fintech summit where they were both on the same stage, as well as Andrew Keys, the chairman of the Ether Machine, which is something I'm very much looking forward to as they grow as well. The Ether Machine sounds like very attractive if you're long ETH. One other thing, guys, is Joseph Chalem. I know I've talked about it a lot here. He just had his debut on air. So what I mean by that is him going to CNBC. You know, we've seen Joseph Lubin a million times. We've seen Tom Lee. This was, I'm going to highlight this video real quick, Joseph Chalem's first time on air.
Why was Sharplink the right next move for you, and what excites you as co-CEO?
First of all, we believe we're at a moment that is one of the most exciting in the financial services era, at a paradigm shift where new networks, decentralized, that are trusted, are going to drive the real world economy as well as the global financial system. I believe that we're at a moment that matters, and joining Sharplink was an opportunity to fulfill two missions. One is to be the most trusted accumulator of Ethereum to drive shareholder value, while at the exact same time being a force in the ecosystem to promote institutional adoption of Ethereum in order to advance this new paradigm.
Awesome. So a couple things. He said they want to be the most trusted, but they also want to be a force to for institutional adoption, which we've already talked about as well, which I hate to beat a dead horse, but Joseph Lubin owns Consensus. He's the founder and CEO of Consensus, and Consensus has come out with products like MetaMask. They've come out with products now like the layer 2 blockchain called Linea, which is going to be a competitor to like Arbitrum and Optimism, some other L2s out there that are on Ethereum that are going to be more aligned with Ether in the long run, with burning, staking, all native to their protocol. So I think that's really exciting. I think that's part of what he's talking about is that ecosystem, how everything's aligning. And so we also have just some more news on SBET, which is that they've raised $900 million in capital over the past week. I know that sounds very small compared to the $20 billion that we heard from BitMine. But one thing to note is that $400 million of this was registered directly with institutional investors. So they actually got institutional investors that right at about 1950 price target. Like that's where their institutional investors were buying at. And guys, look at the price right now. We're right around there. Like we're able to buy SBET right now at a very low MNAV at this point in time at $22, and they just issued shares to private investors at like $19.50, I believe is what I was reading. Now, like I said, none of this is financial advice, but when I kind of put two and two together, I gobbled up shares pretty quickly. One other thing to note is that I actually need to scroll down and find it real quick. But one thing to note is that weekly, here it is. Weekly, they do updates on their X page and their website about how much ETH they hold, how much shares diluted, et cetera, et cetera. This week, they actually did not issue that weekly update because their Q2 earnings are actually on Friday, August 15th at 8:30 a.m., which if you're watching this video, when I upload it, it's tomorrow. So I'm actually going to be watching live, and I highly recommend anyone, even if it's in the future, you might have already seen the news, but I would highly recommend checking it out. What I'm excited to see is that, they're talking about transparency. They want to be the most transparent. So this is their time to shine. It's their time to go out on this earnings call and talk about everything. I want them to calculate their MNAV in front of everybody, like show that exactly laid out, just like kind of like BMNR did on their chairman's message. I want them to show who the institutional investors are that just got into this new 400 million offering. I also want to know, like, what's their long-term strategy, specifically around these debt instruments fixed income instruments, the preferred stocks we looked at earlier, which I think they're going to dive into that as well. Now, that's about it for like all the SBET, BMNR news. I do want to hop into just a couple like little fun things out there that are going on. So you might see some new tickers pop up out there. One is 180 Life Sciences here. Ticker, what is the ticker? ATNF. Okay, so the interesting thing about ATNF is, we can go to this article, ETHZilla follows Strategy's playbook with an Ethereum Treasury. Well, they're not really following Strategy's playbook. I think they're more so following like BitMine technology and SBET at this point, right? We can agree there. They're a few weeks late to the party there. But former 180 Life Sciences, which is a biotech company, said it plans to rebrand as ETHZilla and will pursue an Ether Treasury strategy. So let's go look at this stock, guys. Let's go look at the max on the stock. So if you bought into the stock at back in 2017, you would have lost 99.81% of your money. And now, all of a sudden, guys, they decided, down here at the back when they probably should just call it quits, that instead of being a biotech company and do all these things where they're, developing novel drugs and helping with inflammatory diseases, sorry, that's a hard word to say. Let's go ahead and say, screw all that. Let's take all of our money and let's raise some money and let's do one last hurrah and try to become an ETH treasury, because that's, if I'm bullish ETH, you're bullish ETH, our investors are bullish ETH, we can take the share price, which we own a lot of shares of today. We can take the price and drive it through the roof and hopefully bamboozle some people along the way. So guys, I'm not going to be touching this with a 10-stick pole. I don't think you guys should be either, but there are a lot of people that are. I actually do want to pull up real quick. So guys, we can actually pull up Risk on Bobby's latest sheet here, the MNAV update. And the ATNF, as you see on this left column here, is trading at a 6.3x. This was as of yesterday, obviously not regarding today's big drop, but it's at a 6.3 times their net asset value with their ETH holdings, fair market value of that, and everything. So that looks a little pricey, guys. So I don't know why you'd really put your money in there when you can buy SBET at a 1.2, or some of these other plays which are actually trading under a 1.0, which is wild. One thing, I forgot to mention, guys, is BMNR with this $20 billion offering, where is that? Right here. With this $20 billion, if you guys remember from the chairman's message, Tom Lee specifically said one of their ways they can accumulate ETH is actually by buying other ETH treasuries. And so what's a good time to buy an ETH treasury? A good time to buy ETH treasury would be whenever they're trading under a 1.0 net asset value. So if BMNR is trading, as you see here, at a 2.1, a 2.1, they could gobble up one of these other players like GAME ticker at a 0.7 and ultimately take all their Ethereum and multiply it by 3, actually. Holy shit. Yeah, exactly 3. So that's an option for them. Not only just buying ETH, they could do something like that with all that money they have, which is pretty exciting. So it's not only ETHZilla, guys, it's also a couple other companies. ETHZilla, though, is getting a lot of traction. One thing to note is because of the backers that they have GSR, they have Electric Capital, they have Cyber Fund, which was started by the founder of Lido Finance. So these are some big names actually pouring into these plays. I don't really understand why. But they're saying that they're bringing together Ethereum's OG builders, top DeFi founders, and Wall Street veterans into one ticker, and that you should buy ETHZilla over SBET, over BMNR. And I just don't buy it. I'm not going to be buying. Another ticker, guys, is this Upexi, which over the last 5 years, check its story. They're down 92.5%, where they engage in development, manufacturing, and distribution of consumer products through direct-to-consumer network, wholesale partnerships, and major third-party platforms like Amazon. And guess what they've done now? They've completely rebranded, and now they are a Solana treasury. So if you're really interested in Solana, they're talk about their thesis, why Solana, they're trying to, increase shareholder value. So that's the biggest Solana treasury at the moment, is this company called Upexi. And then we also have MEI Pharma acquires Litecoin and launches an institutional treasury strategy with Charlie Lee and GSR advising. So this is very interesting because MEI plans to formally update its corporate identity in the weeks ahead, aka a complete rebranding, because they're not in a pharmaceutical company anymore. They're going to be a Litecoin treasury. So maybe they'll be like LTCA, I don't know. That was kind of dumb, but you get the point, where they are going to continue to assess preclinical activities with their drug candidate pipeline that includes yada, yada, yada. So I guess they are going to be still doing some stuff within their pharmaceutical company, but they're also going to be at the same time, guys, not distracted at all, by the way. They're still going to be a Litecoin treasury. So let's look at their max. Well, if you put your money in, you're down 89%. So I'm not going to be touching these with a 10-stick pull, guys. But that's going to be it for the video today. I hope you guys got a little bit out of this video on the news regarding a lot of the stuff going on. As I mentioned, my main plays are still Sharplink Gaming, still BMNR. I just would highly recommend, doing your guys' own research. None of this is financial advice. I'd recommend checking out stuff like, Risk on Bobby's Twitter, where he daily will update the MNAVs based on, how much shares are outstanding, how much dry powder they have to buy more Ethereum. You could even look at their fully deployed MNAV numbers, which is kind of why I think BMNR is a little attractive still, is because if they were to fully deploy all of the money out there, they would have a little bit higher of a multiple. Or sorry, a little bit lower of a multiple, of course. But thank you guys. That's Tanner Invest. That's going to be my latest update. And follow and subscribe for some more content. Thank you.